Hello, my name's Annie Nixon. I've been bringing you a series on anxiety and how to help yourself with your anxiety, and this is the final session that we're going to do. So we looked at causes for anxiety, and then we have been spelling out the word peaceful with PEA, or all the letters standing for ways that you can help yourself with your anxiety. So P for permit, E for engage, A for activate, C for change. The next E was for enjoy, and F for focus. If you haven't looked at those videos, I suggest that you go back and have a look at them. And today we're doing the last two letters of the word peaceful. So we'll start with U. And U is for use what's available, use the resources that are around the place. There's lots of things which can help us with anxiety, and yet so many people struggle on for years and years, really suffering with it and believing perhaps that it's just how they are, the way they're made, and they can't get any help with it, and that doesn't need to be the case. So use what support is out there. There might be support groups. There are support groups. You could go to your GP and talk about your anxiety. If you don't get a good reception, you could go back. You could ask to see a different GP, but that's a good place to go. You could come for counselling. Obviously, I'm going to push that option, but often I'll say a bit about both and in a minute. You may have a church, which is a supportive community that you could go to, or friends who you can speak to. A lot of people come for counselling because they don't want to burden their friends. And I think there's a fine balance there. If we're constantly going to friends and talking about our problems and not listening to their problems, and yes, they might start to avoid us, but mostly a good friend will be more than happy to listen to your concerns, not see it as a burden, and be glad to help. If you can make that a little bit mutual, so that when they have a problem, you can at least get in touch and show some concern, then that probably works even better. So I know people who have gone on for years with a mental health problem, believing that it would be wrong to take medication for it, who have gone for prayer in churches, for prayer ministry, who have come for counselling. And when they've come for counselling, one of the first things that we normally would say is, have you checked this out with your GP? And I know people who have gone to the GP, have got the right medication, and have got better very quickly after years of feeling that wouldn't be a good thing to do. Short-term medication to help stabilize you and then to help you to do the work that you would do in counselling to get better can be a very good thing. So although medication long-term, most of us would prefer not to take it, sometimes it's necessary. Medication short-term, again, we might not like the idea, but if it stabilizes us and helps us feel well enough to do the work in counselling to get better, then it's a good thing. Both and is often the best way rather than either or. Counselling will help you to get to the bottom of the problems and resolve the underlying problems, but medication can be useful in the short term. There are books, there are articles on the internet, endless things which you can look at, which might help you. And yes, I said I'd do a little plug here for Counselling4Yeovil. If you're in the Yeovil area, or if you're in Somerset or Dorset and can get to us, Counselling4Yeovil is a counselling charity which offers affordable but professional counselling. So all the counsellors are professionally trained and supervised and do ongoing training. But because we're a charity, we can afford to offer counselling at a price that you can afford. So I'll put the number up at the end, and if you think that would be helpful for you, then get in touch with us. So that's you. L is for learn to leave it. Learn to leave it. Sometimes we need to put something down, not keep worrying away at it. That might involve making a decision. And accepting there's some risk in decision making. But if you are worrying something round, if you're worrying an issue around non-stop, if it's almost like an obsessive thought pattern that you get into where you worry something around non-stop, which is more important? to sort it all out in your head, followed by inevitably another worry, which you have to sort all out in your head, followed by another worry, which you have to sort all out in your head. Which is more important, to do that or to enjoy your life? Because while you are trying to sort everything out in your head, you're missing out on a lot of enjoyment in life. Making a decision when those thoughts come in and you feel that you have to solve them, making a decision that actually I've got a choice here. Which is more important, to solve that or to go out and do what I wanted to do today? Is important. I saw a quote on Pinterest recently. I don't usually like quotes on Pinterest, but this one was good. I thought, anxiety happens when you think you have to figure everything out. We don't have to figure everything out. We're never going to figure everything out. So why commit to having to follow this thought through and work it out and find out what to do about everything? We can't. Maybe having a little mantra when you can feel a thought getting obsessive and thinking you have to work it through to a conclusion. Maybe this: anxiety happens when you think you have to figure everything out. Maybe that would help you. Or maybe just choose life, whatever works for you. But to say that would help you to put that worry to bed and to move on and do something more fruitful. Other things that we can learn to leave. We talked about when there's something that we need to do and we are very anxious about doing that rather than avoiding it, it's best to push on in and do it and give our brain a new experience of this thing not being bad or dangerous, but being okay. So I acknowledge that I really don't like going on an airplane, but because it's something I need to do and want to do, I push through and I do it. There are other things that I don't make myself do, which would cause me a huge amount of anxiety. So, for example, I don't feel the need to have a go at hang gliding or free fall parachuting or black water rafting, white water rafting, whatever. There are things that I don't need to put myself through. I'm never going to need to do those things. I don't particularly want to do those things, and so I leave it. I don't feel the need to constantly push myself to do things which would cause me great anxiety and which are unnecessary. That's another way we can learn to leave it. And there's a book by Dr. Richard Carson called Don't Sweat the Small Stuff. And the reason he called his book that was because he had written to a best-selling author, Dr. Wayne Dyer, and asked him to do a credit for his book. And somehow there'd been a muddle. He hadn't heard back from Dr. Dyer, but the book company had used an old quote from this person that he greatly respected and had done it without permission. So Dr. Richard Carson was very worried about it, and eventually he wrote to Dr. Dyer to apologise and to say, I don't know how this happens, and I hope it doesn't ruin our relationship, and I'm really sorry. And what Dr. Wayne Dyer wrote back was this: these things happen, but the way that we live peacefully in life is don't sweat the small stuff. And then he put, by the way, it's all small stuff. Well, I don't think everything is small stuff, but most of what we worry about in the end turns out to be small stuff. So don't sweat the small stuff, because most of it is small stuff. People talk about anxiety as being a channel that we tune into, and we can try and learn to leave that channel and tune into a more useful channel. I did say at one point earlier in this series that we would say a little bit about sleep. So we've really dealt with peaceful, we've dealt with use what's available and learn to leave it. Just at the end, I'm going to say a little bit about sleep. Make your bedroom conducive to sleep. It needs to smell nice. It needs to be reasonably tidy. Don't have work stuff in there. Make sure that it's not too light. And make sure you've got enough air in there. It's not too hot. Think about your bedroom, and sometimes some very, very simple things can make your bedroom more conducive to sleep. Think about your bedtime routine. Going to bed at a regular time and getting up at a regular time, even if you're not immediately falling asleep, helps your body clock to get into a good pattern. Screens before bedtime are not a good idea, not because I'm a boring killjoy who's had too many teenage boys in the house, but because there's a light, a special light that comes from screens, which actually has been proved to disturb sleep. So not having screens just before bedtime is a good helpful thing. Don't drink things with caffeine and loads of sugar before bed. That's not going to be helpful. So later in the day, be careful what you're eating and drinking. Stimulation just before bedtime, socializing, having a noisy time isn't going to help you sleep. So a relaxing time before bedtime. When you're in bed, if you're not falling asleep, try the breathing exercise that we did in the last video. Just breathing in and breathing out. And when things come into your head, letting them come in, not doing anything about them, carrying on breathing. Sometimes that works so well. I've had clients who've come in very anxious to counselling sessions who've fallen asleep in the session doing that exercise. So use that exercise to help you calm. You're not trying to make yourself go to sleep. You're just trying to get calm. And when you take your focus off, I need to sleep, I've got to sleep, I'm going to be tired in the morning, then you're less likely to sleep. When you think I can lie in bed calmly and enjoy lying in bed calmly and resting, you're more likely to drift off. Another thing which can help is having something that you do when your brain is busy, rather than just telling your brain not to be busy, replace it with another activity. A good one is trying to think of things which begin with every letter of the alphabet. So an animal that begins with each letter of the alphabet, a tree that begins with each letter of, or a vegetable or a fruit or a boy's name or a girl's name, doesn't matter what, but as you're doing it, very often you don't even get to the end because you've fallen asleep. But again, it's not about trying to make yourself fall asleep. It's just about doing something else. It could be imagining a safe, beautiful place where you would like to be, or it could be going off into some flight of imagination that's pleasant to you. But something which is soothing. I would suggest, people often say, what do you do if something's worrying you in the night and you think you need to write it down so you don't forget it, and otherwise it'll stay in your head. I used to do that. I used to have a jotter next to the bed and jot down anything that came into my head in the night that I thought, oh my goodness, that's really important, I mustn't forget it. And jotting it down did help. I could then go off to sleep. But over the time of looking at what I'd jotted in the middle of the night, I realised that actually none of it was very important in the morning. So now I don't bother. What I say to myself, if something comes into my head, I think, well, if that still feels important in the morning, if that still comes into my head in the morning, then I'll do something about it. And that has helped me sleep. I would also suggest that you don't have a clock where you can see it. Some people look up and they say, oh, I wake up at 3:30 every morning. And actually, if you rouse and you don't know what the time is, and you're not getting stressed about the fact that you're not getting enough sleep, you're more likely just to doze back off until the alarm goes. So this is about not panicking. It's about a calm acceptance that some of the time you might be asleep in bed, some of the time you might just be resting in bed, but you're letting your thoughts go to calming, soothing places. Medication to help you sleep obviously is something you would need to talk to your GP about. Again, most people don't like the idea of having to rely on regular medication, but sometimes it's necessary. Sometimes there are other sort of medications that are not prescribed ones that might help you sleep, but that is really something you would need to talk to your GP about. If you suffer from anxiety, depression, anything like that, there can be a horrible moment when you first wake up in the morning, and that might be 5 o'clock, or it might be 7 o'clock if you're lucky. If you feel depressed, you'll know that you can wake up, feel okay for a few seconds, and then it's like whoosh, like this huge weight lands on your chest or sinks down to your stomach. If you feel anxious, you can wake up, feel okay for a few seconds, and then it's like this sort of anxiety grips your throat and makes your heart beat faster. It's a very unpleasant feeling. But if you can leave the feeling alone, if you can just lie there and leave the feeling alone for 90 seconds, The worst of that feeling will pass on its own. If you don't reinforce it, the worst of that feeling will go. If you just lie there and think, oh, yes, this is the morning feeling, don't need to do anything about it. Let's just lie here for a minute and let it go. If you find it hard to do that, then if it's 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock in the morning, sometimes it's better, rather than lying there and stewing, which is what we would otherwise do, to get out of bed, go and make a cup of tea, even have a shower, and then come back to bed and drink your cup of tea and fall back asleep. And you're far more likely then to be able to get another hour or two sleep and feel much better. Okay, so that's it. We've looked at reasons for feeling anxious and historic reasons and all sorts of reasons. We've looked at 8 different ways that you can help yourself. And now it's up to you. If you can go back over those ideas and really try and put them into practice, they will make a huge difference to your anxiety. If that feels too difficult, by all means, give us a ring at Counselling4Yeovil and we'll see how we can help you further. But even the worst situations can be improved with the right help. So please don't give up and feel that you just have to live with it. Okay, you take care. Bye-bye.